Hi, my name is Neil Montgomery, and today I will be presenting Chapter 1 of our textbook, Organizational Behavior, Managing People and Organizations. So hopefully you have your PowerPoint open. For the opening slide, I have how I would organize this chapter. Now I know they wrote it, they put the work in, but for me, there might have been a few changes. For example, I would have started off, which they do, what is organizational behavior? Because I didn't really know what exactly it is, so start me off with a clear definition and description. Second, give me some key concepts and terms. Tell me what it is, give me the key points, help me to kind of fill in the blanks so then we can get moving. Third, I know they're not responsible for this, but what would really be helpful is how does organizational behavior relate to communication studies? Because we are doing a communication studies degree, how do they integrate? That may be asking too much. Fourth, a history of organizational behavior. Give me a background where it comes from. I think they do a good job with this for the most part. Fifth, examples and applications. They give, I think, some great examples for us to look at, big companies that we all know. And then applications. Here's how you do it. You managers, you people who are going to be managers of people, here's how you apply what we're teaching you. And then finally, where do we go from here? Lay out the chapter for me. And then the extras that we find in each chapter, a global mindset. This is very important for the authors and for our world today to understand. I love the United States. I'm proud to be an American. But we also need to see what can we learn from other cultures, other countries, other situations. They give some great case studies to see, here's a company, and then they illustrate an example of an issue like Smucker's and the role of ethics in the Smucker's company. Well done. And then finally, some improve your skills, some things that you can apply as a manager to be better. And in this first chapter, they give an interview questions example. Great idea. Hiring and firing is an important part of being that manager role in a church as the pastor. And this book called Hire with Your Head uses the same principle of asking people questions, but including to ask them for specific examples. Did you ever fire somebody? Give me an example of what that looked like. How did it go for you? So some good things that they include in the chapters. Another element to understand is their assumption is that you are going to be a manager. You're going to be overseeing people, or you either are or are going to. And so that kind of is a common thread that runs through all the chapters. And they give very specific examples of here's how you can improve. So they do give us the definition: the study of human behavior in organizational settings, the interface between human behavior and the organization organization itself. So that helps us understand. We're talking about an organization, the individuals in that organization, how do they function? The organization as a whole, how does it function? And the interface, the interconnection, the coming together of the individual, also groups, small groups in the group, and work groups maybe, and then the overall organization. They start with management functions. As a manager, here's some of the things you will need to be aware of what needs to be done. That you need to do planning and organizing, putting things together, leading the process of getting the organization's members to work together toward the organizational goal, and controlling, making sure things are not spinning out of control. Then the next thing, another chunk, is management skills. Here is what a manager needs to have, the skills in their holster ready to use. And then they give us 4 of those: technical skills, specific tasks in the organization, interpersonal skills, and maybe this might be one of the most important: how do you connect with people? In fact, they began the textbook talking about people make up companies and how important people are. People are important, so having interpersonal skills. Third, conceptual skills. Think big picture. In a book by George Barna called On Leadership, he talked about this principle of a pastor as the only kind of elder or leader in the church, and that may not be the best role because he identified that many pastors are not leaders per se. That's not their strength. Their strength is teaching and preaching, maybe pastoral care, but then they're called to be the leader. And they would even say, Barna would say, this is one of the reasons why churches don't grow, that the pastor doesn't have the skill set to be that conceptual leader. And that's why we need multiple elders in a church, that together they provide a leadership team. Worth reading that book. And then diagnostic, he'll see the problem and fix the problem. Now, they also enter into a section on competitive advantage in an organization. That is, how do you succeed? And the new slide on this with the definition printed out. How do you succeed as a company when there are lots of other companies doing the same thing you are? And then they lay out some different methods of distinguishing your company. Cost leadership, meaning low price. Differentiation, what makes your product unique. Specialization, where do you specialize? And growth, how are you going to grow in your area? Another section that I thoroughly enjoyed was on the history of organizational behavior. Here's where the discipline developed. They go all the way back, early organizational behavior with Aristotle and Plato and Sun Tzu with his book, The Art of War. I remember reading that years ago. And then also Machiavelli and his book, The Prince, to manipulate people, and the ends justify the means, I guess, as a leadership strategy. But then they talk about scientific management that they describe to maximize when organizations rationalize with precise sets of instructions based on time and motion studies. So we moved into a new element there, and they talk about the Hawthorne effect of another change where people, when they feel that they are cared about by being watched and assessed in a positive way, they actually improve performance. And they talked about the lighting study, and the light was given better and was given worse, but it didn't matter. It was the attention they were given that made the difference. Mary Parker Follett and W. Edwards Deming. I've never heard of Ms. Follett, but Deming, I remember reading some stuff in leadership books on working with Japanese companies and total quality management. Then they move on to perspectives on organizations. Systems perspective, which is material comes in, people come in, input, and then output and the environment. Another perspective is situational, on contingency, that things don't always go. If this happens, then you can expect this, but not always, and leaving that contingency. And then interactionalism, the continuous and non-directional interactionism of how things work together. Some management effectiveness. They're saying, here's how a manager, you need to be good at these things. Enhancing efficiency, enhancing employee commitments, promoting citizenship. Thought that'd be an interesting paper topic, possibly. Minimizing dysfunctional behaviors, and having the wrong people in the wrong seats on the bus, providing leadership in your company. And then driving strategic execution. Now, why do we need to learn this? What point is it? And they're kind of the implication, well, don't we always know this already automatically? Do we need to really look at it? Isn't it just common sense? And he makes a couple of points that common sense isn't always common, and it doesn't always make sense. And not everybody has common sense. So we need to look beyond to scientific studies and research utilizing the scientific method introduced by Francis Bacon, and realizing that we can learn, we can study, we can apply what we learn to be better at behavioral management in this way. And then global replication, again, their concept of the global aspect of looking at the world. What can we learn from other places, other cultures, other languages, other countries? Then he looks at the framework of the book. I thought this was very poor, but they're saying we're going to look at it from four angles: the individual angle, groups and teams, leadership, and the organization. And those will be the four big topics or categories that as you go through the textbook you will see. And finally, here's my discussion question, the one question you'll be responding to. Do you see yourself as a future manager of people? How does this fit for you? Can you learn some things? Do you see yourself applying these in the future of the role that you have, whether it's in a church or a company or your own business? Do you see yourself as a manager? And I guess you will be responding to that. So that's it for this chapter, and God bless you.